By the time the confetti cannons misfired and dusted the Rotary Club's pancake breakfast with red, white, and blue paper circles, I had already hit post. I didn't mean to. My thumb slipped, or fate pushed it, or maybe the algorithm prefers betrayal served hot with maple syrup. Either way, the video, my video, was up on our town's Facebook group next door, and even the church youth group's group chat before I could finish the sentence. This isn't about politics. This is about a cheating wife and a man who took his vows like a yard sign, put up during election season and ripped down after. People gasped. Somewhere, a toddler started crying. The mayor, who wasn't the politician, dropped a tray of sausage links, which rolled like shiny little truth bullets under the folding chairs. On the stage, he stood there, the local politician, the guy with the crisp smile that never reached his eyes and the shake hands with the baby then sanitize routine. The lighting caught the gel in his hair like a chandelier in a catalog. He'd come to announce a Family Values Week, which was supposed to kick off with a testimonial from my wife, a woman who, until 3 Saturdays ago, regularly swore she was at her mother's condo on the other side of town, a place with an HOA so strict they fine your geraniums for leaning. In my video, you could see them together in a driveway that wasn't her mother's, where the cul-de-sac curved like a smirk and the porch light flickered like it knew a secret. The politician had his hand on her lower back the way a man touches a thing that belongs to him. The caption was 12 words that tasted like battery acid and church mints. My cheating wife wasn't at her mother's. She was with him. If you slowed it down, which plenty of people did, you could see what looked like a wedding band glint on his right hand, the detail that launched 3 subreddits and 1 conspiracy podcast episode by dinner. "Why the right hand?" the podcast host asked, as if centuries of cultural habits were evidence of a shadow government. "Is it a dog whistle?" I didn't know. I just knew I had evidence of infidelity, and the whole town had iPhones with unlimited data. If truth is a kind of fireworks, I had lit the fuse in public, and I wasn't sure whether to cover my ears or point at the sky and grin. When the politician stepped down from the stage, the room folded around him like a mouth getting ready to spit. My wife wasn't there. She was texting me from a mysterious poor reception zone that appears wherever you need one. "Where are you?" she wrote. A sentence that means everything and nothing. I typed back, "Center of town, center of everything." She sent a thumbs up. No emoji feels lonelier than a thumbs up from the person who once traced "forever" in the air above your chest with her finger in the dark. The politician tried to get to the door. He bumped into Officer Timmons, who, to his credit, had been practicing de-escalation by watching YouTube videos of yoga with goats. "Sir," Timmons said, his palm out like a sunrise, "we need to let people pass." People weren't passing. People were gathering, and gathering is what we do when betrayal is local. Church friends, the barista who knows your order, the lady who inspects recyclable bins on Wednesdays and reports violations with the efficiency of a Swiss train. Everyone was there, because in our town, a scandal is a community project. "Family matters should stay in the family," someone muttered, and someone else said, "Not when Family Values Week is sponsored by the guy in the video." I'd always imagined revenge as a cinematic moment, a quiet man with a plan, a crescendo of strings. But it turns out revenge is sticky. Your hands smell like syrup, and the PA system squeals. You don't look noble. You look like a dad who hasn't slept since Thanksgiving. It wasn't even supposed to happen there. I had planned something measured, a private meeting, maybe a lawyer present, maybe a box of tissue. But the universe has its own choreography, and it handed me a microphone at precisely the wrong right time. "I didn't make this decision lightly," I said into the mic, though I'd made it like a person leaping from a burning porch. Betrayal isn't just a word in a paperback. It's a seat at your kitchen table that stays warm long after the person's gone. The politician, flanked by staffers who looked like they'd studied crisis management at a summer camp, reached for the mic, and I pulled it back like a fisherman with a stubborn trout. "Sir," he said, with that tone reserved for unruly citizens and toddlers, We don't have all the facts." That line made a sound in the room, the soft thud of 100 people remembering every time someone told them their eyes had misread their own lives. "We have enough facts," I said. "We have addresses and receipts and Tuesday nights at places her mother doesn't live." By then, the video had traveled beyond the community center's cinder block walls. Strangers were leaving comments like they were at a potluck of opinions. "King, expose them. This reeks of a smear campaign." I knew he was too polished. "Please blur the house number. Don't drag the neighbor into this." "Mom?" Someone had already annotated the clip with arrows and circles, and a slow zoom that captured the politician's smile collapsing in gentle increments. "You could set a metronome to it," one comment read. Another person asked if I needed a lawyer. 2 offered theirs for free because infidelity cases are why we went to law school. A sentence that stopped me for a second because who goes to law school for this? But maybe that's America. We all specialize in somebody else's heartbreak. I'd like to tell you I felt triumphant, that I shouted a speech into the rafters about cheating and family and the kind of toxic love that whispers, "I'm your home," while setting your porch on fire. The truth is, I kept thinking about the first time we saw a house together, how she stood in the doorway and said, "Imagine Christmas here." And I did. Revenge is never as smooth as the movies. It has splinters. You want to know how it started? Not here. Not with the microphone or the confetti or the sausage links. It started the week the cicadas came out in numbers that made sidewalks hum. The week she told me she was going to her mother's because the condo HOA had a thing with the gutters, and I pretended to believe that gutters can be urgent at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. It started with a scent I couldn't name and a laugh I didn't recognize, and the slow collapse of a story we'd both agreed to tell. But I'm getting ahead of myself by starting at the end, or maybe I'm catching up with the truth by admitting it. If you prefer a straight line, I'm sorry, this isn't a straight line story. It's a cul-de-sac. You enter, you loop, you pass the same mailbox 3 times, and by the time you find the right driveway, the porch light has turned itself off, as if to say, "We're done here." I swear I didn't set out to star in a parody of a true crime doc narrated by my own suspicion. I'm a hardware store manager. I read instruction manuals for pleasure. My rebellion is buying the good coffee once a week. I believe in receipts, in lists, in the fiction that if you can line up the parts correctly, the thing will hold. The first flicker arrived the night she came home smelling like a scent the internet would later try to name. Not perfume, not soap. Something like a hotel hallway with the windows shut. "How's your mom?" I asked, because questions like that beg for the easy lie. "Getting by," she said, which is a phrase people use when they're talking about grief or dental insurance, not gutter maintenance. "The HOA is out of control." She dropped her purse on the chair where we eat the mail. This is the part where I tell you about our thing, because that's what podcasts do. They give you a detail to hold on to while the boat rocks. Our thing was the diner on Wednesdays. We'd split a slice of pie because Wednesday is the middle of the week and marriage is the middle of a long road you drive together. We skipped that Wednesday because her mother's gutters were, in her words, an emergency I can't ignore. I let it go because love is a series of tiny surrenders until one day you're standing outside a house with your phone at chest height, filming. The next week, a charity gala at the country club. She had a dress that looked like the kind of ocean you only see in travel magazines. I didn't go because I can't stand rooms where the forks outnumber the handshakes. She texted a picture, the politician, framed over her shoulder, his smile doing that thing where it hints at a monologue. "He's shorter in person," she wrote, like height is a moral measure. I wrote back, "Have fun." And then, because I am a man who manages inventory down to the screw, I counted her weekends at her mother's, and they added up like a bad math problem. You can't show the teacher because you know you'll cry. Suspicion changes how you see the world. The new coffee shop becomes a rendezvous point. The closed for remodeling sign is code for closed for romance. I convinced myself the city council's temporary zoning variance was love language, that reading at the library on Thursdays was just a euphemism for infidelity wearing sensible shoes. I told myself I was being foolish. I told myself to stop. But then there was the Walgreens receipt that fell out of her purse for a lipstick she doesn't wear at a Walgreens near a neighborhood we don't drive through unless the GPS insists. There was a Hotel Points email she tried to delete mid-scroll, and the frantic swat at the phone that said, "Sorry, spam, you know how it is." A sentence built to slide past your ribs and into the place where doubt sleeps. I started running in the mornings, a thing I hate, because moving forward is sometimes the only way to steer around panic. I jogged past yard signs for the politicians' campaign that used words like integrity and neighbors like they were flavors he could taste. I imagined my house a stage set, a pleasant facade wheeled on and off between acts. Our vows were real, she told me on a Sunday when I, stupidly, said I missed pie. Family first, she added, and I thought how betrayal loves to hide behind that word, because family is a flag we salute while someone replaces the stripes with blank space. The first place I went wasn't a private investigator. It was my neighbor, Gerald, who flies a drone because he doesn't like his feet leaving the ground. "I can track a raccoon from 3 neighborhoods away," he said, a sentence I chose to interpret as a skill, not a cry for help. Gerald is the kind of American original you pray for and dread. He's also the president of our HOA subcommittee on holiday lights, which meant he knew everyone's schedule down to the minute because he schedules his petty grievances like a German train system. "You got an address?" he asked, as if people like us just collect those in a drawer. I didn't have an address. What I had was a mother-in-law who, when I called to say hi, picked up on the second ring and said, "You know she's not here, right?" Like a woman who refuses to be drafted into someone else's cover story. "She said she was at your place," I said, letting every syllable move slowly, like a person walking through a dark garage with both hands out. "Oh," her mother said, and you can fit an entire season of a prestige TV show into a single "oh." "Well," she said, "maybe she's on her way." We hung up on the idea of "on her way," which turned into the longest miles I've ever driven, across town to a neighborhood with bald oaks and porches that looked like the front rows of respectable lives. I parked 2 streets over and walked like I was auditioning for the role of Invisible Man. The driveway with the porch light that flickered like a secret belonged to the politician's communications director, according to the internet, which knows where we live and the price we paid. My phone camera is not good in low light, and I am not good at standing still, but I got the silhouette of 2 people who understood silhouette and did it anyway. That was the first clip. I didn't post it. I watched it in the garage on my workbench, next to the Christmas lights and the box of baseball cards I'll never sell. It made a sound, the truth. You can say it doesn't, but it does. A hum in your teeth, a buzz where your chest used to be. I tried to be reasonable. I tried to ask questions like a man on a PBS show. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" I asked, a sentence that always sounds like a riddle the Sphinx might admire. "Work is crazy," she said, and there's that word again, work, the cloak everyone wears when romance takes a lunch break and doesn't come back. "I love you," she added, "and humans are incredible. We can hear 'I love you' and 'I am cheating' in the same breath and file, both under 'maybe.' If you're waiting for me to say I hired the drone, I didn't. Gerald hired himself, which is how people like Gerald operate. It's a hobby," he told his wife, who told my wife, who told me Gerald had privacy issues. "I have privacy solutions," he told me, which is what he calls extra batteries. He gave me grainy footage, which I didn't want, of my wife getting out of a car with the politician, which I really didn't want, and the shaky view made it feel unreal, like I was watching 2 extras in a show I never meant to write. I asked him to stop. He said he already did. He sent me one more clip. It wasn't the drone footage that broke me, though. It was the text thread I found, because I am a man learning how to be the villain in his own life, and villains do desperate things with passwords. It wasn't even spicy, not in the way the internet demands. It was worse. It was logistical, domestic, boring, in a way romance should never be. "Your mother?" he wrote. "She thinks I'm at bar class," she wrote back, and here's where I learned my wife had taken a class named after a ballet rail and I hadn't noticed. "See you soon," he wrote, 3 small words that made my vision go white at the edges. Betrayal isn't always cinematic. Sometimes it arrives in lowercase. I could have confronted her then. I could have said, "This is cheating, this is infidelity, this is toxic love pretending to be something noble," and maybe the story would have ended in our kitchen with the dishwasher humming. But something else had lodged in me by then, a splinter of conspiracy, a feeling that the man shaking hands at the farmer's market was part of a network of favors and lies, and my personal disaster was a thread I could tug. "Follow the thread," Gerald said, which is also what you say when you're untangling Christmas lights, and the lights always hide a broken bulb somewhere you can't see. So I followed it, right into the heart of a town that says it cares about family, right into a week where the politician was set to announce a program to restore trust in public life, right into my own worst instinct, which was not to privately grieve, but to publicly insist. If you feel like you're in a movie, I told myself in the mirror, remember it's a comedy now, a parody of a wholesome place that pretends to spot the bad apples while investing in the orchard. I rehearsed lines for the confrontation and forgot them as soon as I heard my own voice. I know how I looked, the cliché of the man in a garage with a corkboard and red string, a parody of a detective whose only cases are domestic and unpaid. But it wasn't string, it was painter's tape because I had it handy, and it peels without residue. I drew lines between the politician's calendar, the communications director's porch light, the fundraiser at the brewery, and the nights my wife said "Mom," and I began to see a shape that wasn't a heart. Our American rituals were all there, mocking me. The Sunday service where he read a verse about forgiveness, the Little League opening day where he threw a pitch and my wife clapped like a metronome. The Costco sheet cake he cut for a ribbon cutting of a playground built in the shade of the very oak where I first kissed my wife. He was everywhere because he'd made himself a brand. She was there because she was falling out of our life softly, like a person slipping behind a sliding door. The conspiracy part, if there is one, isn't what the internet wanted, with secret handshakes and lizard people and coated yard flamingos. It was simpler and uglier. A small-town machine greased by proximity. His staff lived near us. His donor's pool house had a side entrance. The library's back room smelled like copy toner and the whisper of promises. If you want to get away with cheating where everyone knows everyone, don't hide, blend, be visible. Shake hands so often people forget to count yours. I kept track. I tracked like an accountant of heartbreak. Tuesdays, her mother. Wednesdays, not pie. Thursdays, a friend's book club that never mentioned a book. I found the book club online. It was a club for wine, which of course is a book if you read it the right way. She began correcting me about things I remembered. That's how betrayal works, by making you doubt your own archive. "We never had pie on Wednesdays," she said once, and I stood there like a man holding a pie pan he just pulled out of a memory oven. "We did," I said. "You liked cherry. You said it tasted like childhood." "I'm allergic to cherries," she said, which is a ridiculous sentence in a different life and perfectly reasonable in the one where memory is a tug of war and you don't have the strength. Here's the satire. While my marriage unspooled, the politician was preparing Family Values Week, a 7-day parade of wholesome events, culminating in speeches about commitment and unity. Every flyer had his picture cropped so close you couldn't tell which way his eyes were looking. The slogan, "We keep our promises here," felt like a dare. I tried to tell myself this was just coincidence, but coincidence is a lazy villain. It wants credit for work it didn't do. I started to think the campaign was built like a stage set too. Each promise propped with 2x4s, each moral plank nailed just far enough in that, if you leaned, it held long enough for the photo. Was my marriage part of the set? Was I? I didn't plan this alone. In addition to Gerald, Battery Baron, HOA Ranger, I had Sandra from the diner, who'd been sliding pie across greasy counters since the Clinton administration. "He's been coming in on Thursdays," she told me, and my heart tried to interpret this as fisherman's lore, distant and harmless. "With different people," she added, and then placed a plate on the counter with her hand on mine. a gesture that said, "I am part of your family now, whether you want me or not." The bartender at the brewery told me he was a good tipper. The librarian told me he was generous with ribbon cuttings. The pastor told me I was in his prayers, which felt like someone putting a blanket on a house fire. Then there were the Ring doorbells. Our town is a necklace of cameras. If you wear the streets on your neck, the beads are glowing lenses. The thing about neighbors is they love to help when the helping keeps them inside near chargers. "I can check my footage," they said, and they did, because voyeurism is a community sport now. I got time-stamped clips of my wife's car moving through neighborhoods where we don't vote. I got a shot of the politician stepping out from a side gate, adjusting his tie like a man going back on stage for the second act. I got a blurry image of them both at the farmer's market buying honey, which, when the internet found it later, turned into a hashtag about bees and hypocrisy that I will not repeat here because you can only take so much. Was I losing it? Yes, but in an American way. I started a spreadsheet. I color-coded betrayal. I sketched out revenge in bullet points, and then wrote paragraphs because bullet points felt too tidy for the mess. I practiced lines in the car like an actor who can't get past the table read. I considered calling his office and asking for a meeting. I drafted an email to my wife's mother and apologetically asked if she would please confirm future alibis in writing. I didn't send it. I preserved what was left of my dignity in a Tupperware container marked Hope. The inversion of the story, the way I'm telling it backward while living it forward, started one night when I couldn't sleep, and I found a podcast about an alleged underground tunnel system beneath America's suburbs. "It's how they move unseen," the voice said, and for a minute I thought of the politician, not monsters. "They travel below your feet while you mow your lawn." I laughed out loud, alone in the dark, because I could see him in his suit, crouch-walking through clay like a mole. But the laughter cracked into something else, and suddenly I could imagine a whole invisible infrastructure of favors, of acting like something in public, of the right people knowing how to never get caught being the wrong people. Parody shades into conspiracy in a well-lit garage at 2 a.m. It feels like finally seeing the blueprints for a house you've lived in for years. When I finally decided to expose them, I told myself it wasn't about humiliation. It was about truth, about pulling down a backdrop so everyone can see the scaffolding. That's noble, right? That's a way to live with yourself when you've chosen public shame over private conversation. Into the painter's tape web, I stuck one more sticky note. Saturday, 10 a.m., Community Center. He'd be there to announce Family Values Week. She'd be there to introduce him, a detail I learned by reading the event program uploaded to the town website like a wedding invitation. "Honor the people who honor their promises," the program read, and I wrote next to it, "Define honor." I didn't invite my wife to a conversation. Maybe I should have. Maybe that's where we became a statistic and not a story. But I couldn't think past the stage. I couldn't think past the public lie. Private lies I can almost forgive. Public lies hire photographers. The morning of the event, I shaved like a man meeting a judge. I wore a good shirt. I printed screenshots because I don't trust the cloud. I rehearsed a version where I spoke for 30 seconds and sat down. I planned to be courteous, a man who says sir and ma'am and respectfully. Then the confetti cannon stickied the air and my thumb hit post, and the plan became what plans do around human beings. It became documentary footage of chaos. That's how we got to the pancakes. That's how I got to the mic. That's how I became the guy you read about at lunch and text your friend. "Do you know these people? Isn't that the hardware store guy?" The town did what towns do. It split into teams. Team me, the betrayed, the vengeful, the folks who believe cheating is a stain that spreads. Team her, the people who asked for compassion, who whispered maybe she was unhappy, who signed their comments, "A child of divorce, please be kind." Team him, the true believers who said, "There's always more to the story," the cynics who laughed and called it predictable, the strategist who checked polling like it could wash a conscience. My video became a Rorschach test, and everyone saw what they always see. My wife texted me a long message the next day that started with, "You humiliated me," and ended with, "I loved you once," a sentence that is perfect and cruel enough to be carved on a courthouse. I didn't respond because there are times in life when the only honest thing you can say is, "I don't know." I met her later in a parking lot so we wouldn't ruin our house with this conversation, and we sat in a car that smelled like fast food and grief. "I told myself it was about feeling alive," she said, and I could picture the politicians' campaign photos. How alive they tried to make a man look who does paperwork for a living. I told myself it wasn't cheating if it was once, and then I changed the definition of once. Her face looked like someone trying to assemble an apology from pieces that don't fit. "Why him?" I asked, which is a question without an answer. She shrugged the way people shrug when they wish the universe would provide better dialogue. "He sees me," she said, and I almost laughed, because seeing is so easy. It's the least expensive thing we do. "We built a family," I said, and the word family sat there like a chair with a cracked leg. She started to cry, and I didn't touch her because there's a kind of toxic love that turns comfort into glue, and I didn't want to trap either of us. She told me she hated who she was becoming. I told her I hated who I became, trying to catch her. We sat there hating versions of ourselves we'd assembled from secrets and painter's tape. The politician gave a statement that afternoon in a room with a flag and a row of microphones, and it was a master class in American amnesia. "I am committed to my family," he said, "and I ask for privacy, and we all make mistakes," a phrase that does a lot of heavy lifting for men with good hair. He said he would step back to focus on repairing what matters, which meant he was staying in the race because power is its own marriage. He didn't say my name or my wife's, which was either mercy or strategy, probably both. He looked right at the camera. I imagined the red light of the lens as a lighthouse warning ships away from rocks. He waved like a man leaving a parade early. The room clapped, because we clap for performances that make us uncomfortable, as if applauding hard enough can solve them. I found myself in an echo chamber of consequence. Lawyers called, counselors called. A TV producer called and wanted to know if I'd sit with a host who specializes in soft-voiced shock. "We'll keep your dignity intact," she assured me, which is the kind of sentence that arrives with a waiver. I said no, because even in my rage, I knew there's a difference between telling your town the truth and selling your pain to strangers. "You could donate your fee," she tried. "For Family Values Week?" I said. She didn't laugh. We hung up like civil people. That night, I took the painter's tape down. I peeled back lines I'd placed with righteous hands and let them curl into tired blue commas on the workbench. I tossed them into the trash with the confidence of a man deleting his own search history. My garage looked naked. I stood there with that weird post-revenge quiet filling up the corners. You think revenge will sound like thunder, but sometimes it sounds like your refrigerator humming 2 rooms away. I made pie. Cherry. I ate it in silence. I did not break out in hives. If you're looking for absolution, I don't have it. If you're looking for a moral, I can only offer this. Cheating is not one betrayal. It's the erosion of 1,000 small trusts until you wake up and you're a man in a parking lot speaking gently to a woman you still love and can't stand. Infidelity is a heist movie without the cool outfits. It's people in sweatshirts moving feelings around in the dark, bumping into things. Family endures or it doesn't, but either way you still have to take the trash out on Thursdays. As for the conspiracy, there are none and there are countless. No tunnels, no hand signals, just proximity and ambition and the shared delusion that public goodness can launder private harm. The satire wrote itself, like it always does when we ask flawed humans to be mascots for virtues. He kept running for office. He may win. People have short memories, and yard signs are cheap. She moved into a rental near her actual mother. I stayed in the house because someone had to guard the ghosts. A week after the video, I found a letter in the mailbox with no return address, written in careful cursive, the kind taught by nuns, or a YouTube tutorial with calming music. "I watched your video 3 times, it began. Not because I enjoy pain, but because it reminded me that truth is heavy and somebody has to carry it to the town square. That couldn't have been easy. I'm sorry for what you lost. I'm grateful you told the truth. Enclosed was a gift card for the diner. There was a note. Pie on Wednesdays is still allowed. I stared at that line until it blurred, and then I put the card in my wallet like a small passport to a country I hope still exists. Sometimes I drive by the communications director's house because habits have inertia. The porch light flickers less now. Maybe they changed the bulb. Maybe they realized the light was a character in a story and they didn't like its performance. The cul-de-sac still curves like a smirk. I turn before I get to the driveway because I don't want to become the man who only drives in circles. I don't know how to end this. That's the part I don't know how to tell. Stories with revenge and betrayal want a clean finish, a curtain to drop. Real life leaves the curtain crooked. I filed papers. We're splitting things that never wanted to be split. Mugs, holidays, friends. The politician shakes hands at the farmer's market. People shake back. I sleep better some nights, worse others. The internet has moved on to a video of a bear in a swimming pool. I go to the diner on Wednesdays. I sit at the counter. Sandra slides me a slice of cherry. "On the house," she says, and I say, "No, let me pay." And we repeat this ritual until both of us feel like good people. If I have anything like advice, it's this: don't build your house on a slogan. Don't tell yourself a story so loudly you can't hear the person sitting next to you. If you suspect, ask. If you're asked, answer. If you must expose, do it with as much mercy as your rage will allow. My cheating wife wasn't at her mother's. She was with the local politician. I exposed her. That's the headline. The soul of it is messier. A man who believed in the architecture of vows, a woman who wanted to feel seen, a town that wants to be good, a machine that wants to be admired, and the quiet after the fireworks, which is not peace, but it is daylight. And yes, in case you're wondering, there is still a part of me that scans the crowd at the community center that expects confetti to fall when I speak the word truth. It doesn't. Not anymore. Truth is heavier than confetti, and it lands where you drop it. Sometimes it lands in a room full of pancakes. Sometimes it lands in a person's life so hard they spend the next year sweeping up. I'm learning to live with it. I'm learning to carry it better. I'm learning that even in a story full of infidelity, toxic love, and cheating, you can still choose what to do with your hands. I hold the mic less. I hold my coffee steady. I hold the door for strangers because family is bigger than blood and smaller than slogans. I don't know if that's redemption, but it's something I can do while the daylight continues, while the town keeps moving, while the yard signs come down and the grass grows back like a promise you can mow.